talk to people in various countries, you talk to folks in Ghana, and they always think that there's gold in the streets in America, right? That all I gotta do is just get there. And there is opportunity, but it comes at a cost. There are plenty of Ghanaians that are in the US that are doctors here or lawyers here, and they're driving a cab, or they're working 19, 20 hours, and they can afford a place to live and some food, and they can barely send money back home. What's interesting is we talk about Great Britain, we talk about that region of the world, and what I always ask young people when I talk to them and they have a negative view about Africa, I said, name me one product that comes out of Great Britain. What do they produce? And that's the fascinating part of all of this, right? If you look at how rich the continent of Africa is, and you compare it to the other colonial powers, you say, it's not even close. And what makes it even more obscene is that countries that don't produce anything are controlling those regions and continents that produce everything. And it's just an upside down place that we happen to be in.
Meet Markus Green, an attorney with over 25 years of global legal expertise. His distinguished career includes 18 years at Pfizer and pivotal roles at the New York County District Attorney's Office and the New Jersey Office of the Attorney General. As a board member of the Attorney General Alliance, AGA, Markus was instrumental in founding AGA Africa, delivering legal training to 12 countries across the continent. His partnership approach promotes client interests with integrity, establishing him as a trusted legal strategist and crisis management expert, facilitating global business expansion with cultural sensitivity and unparalleled legal expertise.
He's a board member of GUBA and also does a lot of consulting. I've interviewed him before. He's one of my favorite Ghanaians. He goes by the name of Markus Green. Markus, the last time we did an interview, we spoke about your transition becoming Ghanaian.
Yes.
And how has it been so far for you?
It's been amazing. The overall welcoming of the people, the country, it's been just outstanding.
We spoke about your role at Pfizer. You was a vice counsel for Pfizer at the time,
yes,
and now have transitioned into something else, which we'll talk about. Changing roles or coming out of something is usually often hard.
Yeah.
How has it been for you?
Well, it's been great. So I've spent over 18 years at Pfizer, and it was an incredible opportunity to learn, to engage, to do some really interesting work and standing up for patients, not just in the US, but all over the world.
So making that change, right? How was it? Because like I mentioned before, sometimes we're stuck in our role, we're comfortable, you don't want to kind of rock the boat, but sometimes we do need that change to grow.
Yes.
So how was that for you?
It was good. It was good and it was timely. I think that, there are moments in your life where you evaluate and recalibrate. You make decisions, based on, how do you see the rest of your life? And what I've always tried to do, in everything that I've done, obviously I've been a prosecutor, and I worked in the Attorney General's office as chief of staff, and then at Pfizer, all of it has been centered around how do I help the least among us? How do I help individuals who have a muted voice or is viewed as marginalized? And so I was able to do that at Pfizer for a number of years, and I'm looking forward to doing even more of that with MG Law and Consulting, as well as a collaboration with Motley Rice.
Okay, so let's talk about before going into do the consultancy for MG Law Firm, right?
Yes.
Did you take some time out?
I absolutely did. I mean, it was a moment of reflection and introspection, right? To think about the continuum of my life. So, I think so many times we get focused on just doing tasks, just working and plowing forward every day. And it's a big part of American culture where you just kind of work till you drop, basically. And so for me, I always say I'm in the second half of my life, right? I'm 51, and it was a real time to take stock and say, okay, you've done government, you've done the private sector, and you've kind of weaved this thread of trying to help the common man. How can you really lean into that, and can you spend kind of the remainder of your work years doing something that you're extremely passionate about, but you're delivering value and you're moving the needle on issues and with people that you really, really care about.
Yeah. And now I want to touch on the point that Americans are so hardworking. Like, I've now started working with an American institution, and I see the difference. Like, when you talk about work till you drop, it literally is work till you drop.
Absolutely.
There's like, I think in America culture, maybe like you only get like 2 weeks holiday in the year.
Yeah.
People are working on holidays. It's just a working culture.
Yeah, it is an extreme part of American culture, and it can consume you. So it underscores the need and the importance to do work that matters and work that you're passionate about, right? So purposeful work that you're passionate about. And if you're not doing that, if you're in a job that you hate, or a job that you get that sick feeling Sunday night into Monday, which I've never, thank God, I've never experienced. I've always been worked at places that I felt really good about working and felt really energized. But you can imagine if you're put in a position where you're working one of those jobs where you absolutely hate, and you're working insane hours, and you're trying to make ends meet. I mean, so many people, you talk to people in various countries, you talk to folks in Ghana, and they always think that there's gold in the streets in America, right? Like you just, all I got to do is just get there. And there is opportunity, but it comes at a cost. There are, as you know, there are plenty of Ghanaians that are in the U.S. that are doctors here or lawyers here. They're driving a cab, or they're working 19, 20 hours, and they can afford a place to live and some food, and they can barely send money back home. And now they're almost living day to day, but they're separated from the people who they love and care about. So America can be a really, really tough place. When you engage, you have to engage with a plan.
I think it's because Americans have sold this American dream, right? And they've sold a lot of their stuff through film. They make America seem like the best place to live. How do we change our mindset? Because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are trying to leave the continent to America. How do we change our mindset when it comes to those things?
So look, America is an amazing place, and it's afforded me incredible opportunity. But what I always tell folks is, make it where you are. If you could figure out a way to make it where you are, there's tons of resources. The continent of Africa, similar to North America, is probably the only other continent in the world that could be self-sustaining. Everything you can possibly imagine and need is here on this continent. Everything from agricultural to minerals to oil, it's all here. And so what I always advise folks is figure out a way to improve the situation in your own country, and then you can visit America. You can leverage a business abroad. But if you can make it in your home country, you probably can make it elsewhere.
But do you think that us living in a diaspora, we get to see it different because we've kind of been in the UK or US, and so when we come on the continent, we have more of an eye to see the opportunity? Do you think that maybe people do have to travel out just to see and then come back?
That is absolutely a big part of it. Traveling out, and then just, there's so much available with technology now, right? So I think about years ago, you can travel with the click of a mouse, and you can see, all the things that there are to see. Now, there's context that you won't have, but there's opportunities to study, do research, and kind of understand kind of what's out there and the possibilities that are out there. But I agree with you. I do think that it's helpful having traveled and lived somewhere else or seen another environment, and then taking some of those lessons and bringing them back. Because a big part of, I think, what makes Americans successful is habits, right? The ability to form really good habits, consistency, delivering, being on time, all that stuff is kind of baked in, and to be able to take some of those lessons and bring them back home and implement them can really be helpful.
Fantastic. Setting up MG Law and Consultancy, usually for somebody that's worked in your field for 18 years, you would have thought, you know, maybe another company is going to poach you, you're going to work for another company for another, I don't know, 10 years or whatever, however many years. But what made you set up MG Law and Consultancy?
Freedom. Like I said, I'm in the second half of my life and I want to control the pace of my life. MG Law and Consulting, the motto is where passion meets purpose. And the whole idea is to live and dwell in that intersection, so that I'm choosing to work with the entities that I want to work with. I'm choosing the assignments that I'm doing, and all in an effort to uplift and create just a better world, particularly for marginalized and downtrodden individuals. There's so much pressure on people who have less. There's so much pressure. Everything from the environment impacts them differently. Everything from housing impacts them differently. Products, how products are made and services are delivered. If you have a defective product, it's usually a cheaper version of whatever it is. And who's using those cheaper products? Poor people. They're using them. They're getting hurt by them. And so who's standing up for them? It's very easy if you have a Mercedes and there's a defect, you know, because wealthy people, for the most part, drive Mercedes, so they're going to fix that. But if you're driving, a regular mid-size, lower-end vehicle, there's oftentimes less incentive because the people who are impacted oftentimes don't have the same voice.
Before setting up the law firm, did you think, whilst you're having your reset time, to work for another company? Did that ever come to your mind?
Sure, I thought about it, but part of it was kind of been there, done that, and then the other part was when you work for a company, for them, they kind of own your time, and they have a right to dictate your time, and they give you the assignments. And so having that flexibility was really, really important to me, and I wanted to do a variety of different things and work with, a variety of different people on a variety of different issues. And so MG Law Consulting gives me that maximum flexibility, and then it allows me to do what I think a lot of people are realizing is that, we are our individual brands. And so the ability to lean into that and cultivate the work that I want to do. And it's all about the work. I'm not trying to build an empire. I'm trying to build a portfolio of good work.
Fantastic. So how did the consultancy agreement come with Motley Rice? They're huge, right? So how did that come about and what excites you about it?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic opportunity. It's really through a partner at Motley Rice, Linda Singer, and then of course the managing and controlling partner, Joe Rice, that this conversation was born. And part of it was I've worked with Linda before. Linda's a former Attorney General of Washington, D.C., and I worked with her for a lot of years. She's a wonderful person, brilliant lawyer. But really what drove me is the type of cases that Motley Rice does, right? They do big, really important cases, and they address issues that impact marginalized people, everything from going back years ago to the tobacco litigation, to opioids, to issues in Camp Lejeune, all the issues, all the things that impact individuals that oftentimes, just don't have someone standing up for them. They do a lot of those cases. They do big human rights cases all over the world. And so to be able to collaborate with a firm that has that vision, that passion, and the resources to fight, because that's the other challenge, right? So, if you have a company that's a bad actor, a large company, they're going to come with a team of lawyers to defend those cases and to defend those allegations. And so who's going to stand up, who's going to put the money in to present the alternative view. And that's what this is all about. It's all about striking a balance.
Right.
I think there is this notion in law, like there's plaintiffs versus defense, and people like to draw these hard lines, but I think there's really only one side, and that's the side of humanity. How do we uplift humanity? How do we make sure that there's fundamental fairness in the system and that there's a balance in the system?
Already, you're doing a lot of media with them. You've been on Fox. And how do you see using PR and marketing to also push the agenda for what you're doing?
Sure, I think PR and marketing is extremely important. One, it's comforting for folks to hear, ordinary folks to hear, that there are law firms like Motley Rice and MG Law and Consulting that are working to try to meet them where they are. Yeah. They're working to kind of present that alternative view. And they're working, frankly, to keep folks honest, right? So, a big part of doing work in the plaintiff space is making sure that companies and entities that make products hold up their end of the bargain, right? Simply, you're making a safe product, you're making a product, if there are issues, that you provide the adequate warnings on those products. And then when they don't do that, making sure they're held accountable. And what happens is, the beauty of this is that, unfortunately, with large corporations, the only time, not the only time, but most of the time, in order to change behavior, you have to engage them where it hurts, and that's the pocketbook, right? So if it impacts their bottom line, you get the attention of the board, you get the attention of the CEO, and guess what? Behavior changes, systems get fixed, employees get trained, products become safer, and that directly impacts the little guy and the little gal.
And I think also sometimes us as consumers, right, if there's a big brand and you know that maybe they haven't said what they're supposed to do, right? And you take the product, something happens to you. You're kind of scared because you're like, this brand, me going after it, nothing will happen. Little me, right. But then there are millions of people that is probably affected, and they haven't said anything.
Exactly right. And that's where Motley Rice comes in. That's where MG Law and Consulting comes in, and that's what working with state attorneys generals come in. So a lot of people ask, okay, what's the relationship between state attorneys generals and a private law firm and a consulting firm? How do they work together? Well, state AGs, and I've spent many years in the Attorney General's office in New Jersey, they do incredible work. We've seen all of the work that Tish James is doing in New York City, Kwame Raoul in Illinois, Keith Ellison in Minnesota, just terrific work. And what they do is they stand up for the men and women, citizens, ordinary citizens. They are oftentimes the chief consumer protector of their states. They make sure that the water is clean. They make sure that the cars are safe to drive, all of that. And then when these companies or entities misbehave, they have a lot of power to bring lawsuits. Now, some of those states are smaller, and they don't have, I think about Connecticut. Connecticut does incredible work, even though it's a smaller state. A.G. Tong does an incredible job. But oftentimes, in order to compete, in order to go against some of these large companies and go after some of these large companies, they need help. And that's where a firm like Motley Rice comes in. They're able to provide that legal expertise. They're able to kind of fill the gap in terms of staffing in a way that does not hurt taxpayers, because Motley Rice takes on, the lion's share of the load in terms of cost of the litigation, and then ultimately recovers on the back end. But it allows small states to punch above their weight, right? So big states like New York and California, they do really well in terms of the number of state AGs,
Right.
assistant AGs that it can employ, but the smaller states could really use the help, and the citizens of those states deserve the same type of justice that you can get in California. So somebody who's living in Vermont deserves the same justice as someone living in California.
Okay. Has the job started? Are you already on a case? Like, what's
I'm always
happening?
on the case. This is, it's a continuation of my life's work.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Okay.
I've always been, my father was a minister, so I've lived my life in the service of others.
Yeah.
That's how I see myself.
Okay.
So however I can be of service. And aside from plaintiff's work, we're going to do other stuff. I'm going to be involved in a lot of different things and trying to be part of the solving the problem, right? Whatever problem exists.
Okay.
Leveraging relationships, leveraging legal talent, kind of an understanding of how business is done in order to solve problems.
Fantastic. And do you see MG Law and Consultancy doing stuff on the continent as well? We know that you're very passionate about the continent. Are you going to be lending your expertise to Ghana, for instance?
Absolutely. So we are registered in Ghana.
Fantastic.
It was absolutely part of my reflection and contemplation and coming up with MG Law and Consulting. The continent means the world to me. Ghana means the world to me. And I want to be helpful. I want to work with some nonprofits here. I want to try to help the government on issues related to election, banking. There's a variety of issues that I want to engage the continent.
Okay.
And then if there's a company that's here in Ghana that has issues in the U.S. From a government relations standpoint, how do you navigate this morass that is, state and federal regulations? We can help with that.
That's amazing. So there's website already set up.
Yes.
And everything is
We are fully fueled and ready to go. Fired up and ready to go.
Fired up. So what's the website? Is MG Law and Consultancy?
Yes, mglawandconsulting.com.
.com. Simple as that.
Very simple.
Okay. Now let's talk about the diaspora.
Sure.
Everything that we do, especially for us that have had the opportunity to be outside to look in and also make an impact. What role do you believe the African diaspora can play in the development and improvement of legal and healthcare systems in Africa?
Yeah, so when I think about the possibility of a unified Africa, I get goosebumps. Because if we're able to kind of leverage the full strength of the continent, Africa becomes the world power because everything is here. It's the youngest, fastest growing population on the planet. It has every natural resource you could possibly think of: agriculture, tech, music, art, everything. And so it's just a matter of how do you get these pieces working together? How do you get the president of Senegal to talk to the president in Rwanda, Paul Kagame, and share best practices and work in a cohesive way to move the entire continent forward? The challenge is to undo colonialism and imperialism that has, perpetuated this notion of divide and conquer. Picking winners and losers on the continent and pitting them against each other, and then watching the destruction and then saying those people are savages. It's awful. Yeah. It's awful. And so we have to get away from that, and we have to understand the history and move forward in a cohesive and a unified way. It was Kwame Nkrumah who said, right? We're all Africans.
Yeah.
We're all Africans. No matter where you are in the world, you're African. And that notion of Pan-Africanism has to be what drives us forward as a continent. We can't think about ourselves as just Ghana or just Nigeria or just Senegal or just Malawi. We got to think about ourselves as a united Africa. And then that changes everything. You're sharing that the new free trade agreement on the continent, I think is a light. It's a light of possibility in what's next. And the key to all of this is the youth. And if you don't believe that Africa is on the move, just look at music, right? You just completed this incredible bridge with the Grammys on the continent. And the Grammys are not in Africa because it's a nice thing to do. The Grammys are in Africa because this is where it is, right? This is where the creativity is, the innovation is.
This is where music was birthed.
Exactly,
this is where music came from.
This is the root.
This is the root.
Exactly right.
But you know what, Marcus, I was in the Caribbean just a few days ago, and the same challenges that we face on the continent is what I'm seeing there. And I'm saying that because flights even within the Caribbean, I would have to go to America to come back. So I couldn't fly. So for me to get to Anguilla from the continent, I had to go to Amsterdam to get a flight, to go to St. Martin to get a flight to go to Anguilla. So I dream about us being a global Africa, because Africans, black people are Africans all over the place.
Absolutely.
We need to try and get a direct flight from Africa to the Caribbean. Because our brothers and sisters have no idea. When I was there, some of them have not even heard of some of the African countries. We are so disconnected, and it's been 400 years.
Exactly.
And I just couldn't believe that I couldn't get to one. So for me to go to St. Lucia, I'd have to go to Miami to get a flight to go back to St. Lucia when it's 1 hour flight from Anguilla. It's just incredible. And the same thing in Africa. For you to go to another African country, you probably have to go to Europe or the US to get there quicker.
Absolutely.
These are all barriers and challenges that till now we're facing to connect our own people back.
You talk about the how we're disconnected as a people. And I think a lot of that starts with, the basics, education. Like, how are we educated about the world and about the continent, right? So if you go to America, you can find a course in most colleges on African American studies, which is great. But how about African studies? How about, let's understand the unification of the continent. Instead of kind of dividing our history, unify our history. African American history is a part of African history. And I think that's the challenge. There's been so many instances throughout history where there's just been an attempt to divide us and allow us to focus on our differences instead of creating systems that create unification. When you do that, you change how people see themselves. You change how people move and how they do business, and we have to get there. And it starts at the very, very root with how children are educated and how our children are educated around the continent.
You're right about education, because one of the things that I did ask the Minister of Education was, do they teach the kids about anything Africa or nothing? It was because they're still colonized by the Brits. It's just the UK system that they're learning. There's nothing about Africa. And so it's only what they see on TV, bedridden stuff, just, all the negative stuff on Africa is what they see, and that's what they know.
And what's interesting is we talk about Great Britain. We talk about that region of the world. And what I always ask young people when I talk to them and they have a negative view about Africa, I said, name me one product that comes out of Great Britain. What do they make? What do they produce? And that's the fascinating part of all of this, right? If you look at how rich the continent of Africa is and you compare it to the other colonial powers, you say it's not even close. And what makes it even more obscene is that countries that don't produce anything are controlling those
countries that
regions
produce,
and continents that produce everything. And it's just an upside down place that we happen to be in. But it will, I believe, it may not be in our lifetimes, or maybe, that it will get fixed. And it's coming because the world is becoming more and more, kind of small. The global nature of everything, and then the places that have the resources and have the people, right? Because unlike some parts of the world, Africans are still having babies.
Yes, we are, every single minute. What has been your source of inspiration throughout your career, and what keeps you motivated in your new role?
So I'm going to say something that oftentimes people are afraid to say in a professional setting. For me, the guiding light of my life has been my faith. I think that so many times you go to these conferences and you hear people talk about, you ask the question like, how did you get where you are? They talk about all these things. They talk about, mentors and opportunities and basically how great they are and how hard they worked. But they don't talk about their faith. And so for me, my faith in God has been, kind of a guiding principle for me in terms of just providing a moral compass, providing, challenging myself in terms of how could I live the values that I believe in. That's the secret sauce of my life, right? The secret sauce of my life. And if you strip that away, I don't know who I would be, and I think I would be afraid of that person, right? A godless Marcus or a godless Denta. The things that decisions that you would make,
absolutely,
and how you would treat people might be different. And I think there's a lot of folks, regardless of whatever your religion is, whether it's Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, but the belief in a deity, or belief in something greater than yourself, I think is extremely important, because I hear people talk about who don't believe in anything, or they make up their version of God, and then when you boil it down, it's really self-worship. So if you just believe in yourself, you make up the rules. My goodness, you're capable of anything, right? There's nothing guiding your decision making. There's no North Star. So for me, my faith is a big part of kind of who I am, and I try to weave that into the fabric of my life in a very, very real way.
Yes. And I totally agree, and I think for me as well, faith plays a major role in my life as well, and it's nice to hear you say that on camera to people, because you're right, sometimes we don't say that. We talk about, our mentor, or this person, and this person made me do this, but actually it's the faith, it's God guiding, it's the prayers, it's the dark moments when you're alone, where you're praying and fasting and crying to the Lord for direction. So I think that's...
And young people need to hear it, right? Because, there are moments in your life where all you can do is pray, right? Things are out of your control. And they need to hear adults, responsible adults, say that, and say it unabashedly, say it consistently, because I think, we hear about young people suffering from anxiety and suffering from, just having trouble coping with the world, and a belief in God can be an incredible refuge in the middle of a storm. So just to have that knowledge.
What legacy do you hope to leave? With MG law firm and consultancy, and both, working in the United States and in Africa.
Yeah, I just want to move humanity forward. I want to be, helpful to the cause of humanity. I know that sounds a little, Pollyannish or little rose-colored glasses in some way, but it's true. Like I think about the quote from Martin Luther King in his letter to a Birmingham jail that we're all caught up in this escapable network of mutuality bound to a single garment of destiny. Each of us need each of us. I have a very good friend and former Attorney General of Oklahoma, Mike Turpin, who has
Mike.
I remember
Mike. I remember Mike.
All these Turpinisms, and they're pithy, and they make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
One of his lines is always, if you ain't giving, you ain't living.
I think he said that when we were at the AG conference.
Yes, yeah, and those things matter. Those things matter. So the legacy would be simple for me. He did good.
Yeah.
He did good. He helped, change the lives of people on a large scale and on a small scale. I think we all can do, if we all challenge ourselves in our respective roles and respective places to move that needle forward. How do we make the world a better place? How do we make sure that plastics are not killing people? How do we make sure that there's food and medicine for all of us? The resources of this world are incredible. We just have to learn to share them. And some people will say, well, that's socialism. Well, okay, maybe there is a little socialism in it, but why not, I can be as capitalistic as the next person, but when somebody has $100 billion and you have somebody that doesn't have a home, somebody doesn't have food, and these same people call themselves Christians or Jews or Muslims, but there is no charity. There's no thought of how can I take whatever I have and help someone else. And I think that's the perpetual challenge that we all face as just human beings. Forget about being a Christian. How do we help each other? Because we have a short run in terms of our lives, and how we live our lives, I think, is really judged by how we treat others.
Absolutely. And is climate change something that you're going to be looking at? Because we can see, I don't know if you can see it right now, but when it's not supposed to be raining, it's raining. We're having a rainy season. When it's not supposed to be sunny, it's sunny, and it's really hot. There's droughts in a lot of countries at the moment that haven't had rain. Are you going to be focusing on climate change as well? Yeah,
and then the environment generally, right? I think we have a responsibility as stewards of this earth to make sure that the folks come after us have clean water, that the soil is not being polluted and producing food that is harming people. We have a responsibility that we're making products in a responsible way. Like everybody knows that, okay, you have to manufacture certain things, but how can you do it in a way that's sustainable, safe, and more importantly, when you think about where the manufacturing is occurring, where the mining is occurring, those companies, are they doing the right thing for the community and the people for which they have their operation? Are they testing the soil? Are they making sure that they are using the highest environmental standards? Or are they ignoring those things because in their backyard is poor communities? And that's where we come in. We have to stand in the gap for the marginalized folks of this earth. We have to stand up for the least among us. We have to, and we have to leverage and marshal resources to do it, because there are too many bad actors and too many folks that are more focused on profits and less focused on people. And we have to focus on people. And it's not enough to simply say the government will take care of it. The government does a great job in doing what they can, but there's an element in the private sector that has to be responsible. And the companies that are responsible, we ought to celebrate those, and we ought to amplify them. And the ones that are not, we ought to hit them in the head twice. And that's the way it ought to be, because we need this level playing field.
Yeah. And for a future of our children's
Absolutely.
children.
Absolutely.
If we don't get it right, then there will be no future. Markus, thank you so much for joining me on the show. But before we go, I know you said you have a question, but your socks. Let's talk about the Eddie and Crass socks.
Yes.
Because
This is Ghana.
This is made in Ghana.
This is made in Ghana. This is made in Ghana. This is a caveman watch.
Yes, I have my caveman watches.
Made in Ghana.
Where did you get your socks from? So this is Adinkra symbols. So it's got the ginyam, it's got all the signs. How, apart from you just being a lawyer, you are a fashion guru. You love art. We didn't even talk about the art aspect of stuff that you're...
I love art, and for one of the other ventures I'm in is developing an art agency called Marvic Art Agency to help up-and-coming artists in Ghana get exposure. Yeah, so I love art, I love fashion, and I truly believe in Africa, wear Africa. So whether it's native, whether it's socks, whether it's beads, embrace and own your culture, claim your continent. I do it proudly. Now, I have a question for you. So you spent the entire time asking me all these questions.
Oh my goodness.
Kendrick Lamar or Drake?
Kendrick.
Okay. So here's my take. I don't have a horse in the race, but what I do say to all these folks that are saying that this is terrible and they need to stop, it's too personal, I tell them to stop. Let these lions be lions. This is what moves the culture forward.
It's true.
Hip hop has always been moved forward because of rivalries, right?
It's true.
You think of Nas, Jay-Z. You think of,
Tupac, Notorious B.I.G.
Exactly. Competition is good.
It's healthy competition. Yes, I love that question. Make sure you go onto mglawandconsulting.com